Hey, what's up, everybody? So, I do a lot of mock drafts on my actual website, but not very many on YouTube. But there's not much going on right now, content wise, and the draft is only a couple weeks away. And I've worked a lot on the offseason rosters and the draft classes. So, let's go ahead and combine those two and show you how these players could look in their uniform. Mock draft time. Let's go. Cam Ward is not a Caleb Williams or Andrew Luck or that kind of prospect, but I think he'll be a solid starter. Unfortunately for the Titans, he's not a dynamic talent that a team is going to trade 3 first-round draft picks to move up and select, so Tennessee's probably just going to stand pat, select Ward, and hope for the best. Definitely better than Will Levis as a quarterback. Very interesting career arc for Ward. Went from pretty much completely unrecruited out of high school, Incarnate Word, to Washington State, to Miami, to the first overall pick. Quite a journey for this guy. I think he's going to be good. Probably will never be an all-pro, but could make some Pro Bowl teams. Well, that's not saying much. Everybody makes the Pro Bowl these days, but you know what I'm saying. So Abdul Carter may fill a bigger need for Cleveland, but this is a franchise that hasn't really had a dynamic talent to get excited about in recent memory, especially with the whole Deshaun Watson nonsense. This franchise and fan base really needs to hit a home run here. It'll be interesting to see how Travis Hunter is used in the NFL, but he's a prospect we haven't really seen since Charles Woodson like 30 years ago. Receiver or cornerback, he could be a Pro Bowler at either position. Cleveland will probably use him more at receiver. They have Jerry Jeudy, but not much else, and maybe sprinkle in some cornerback here and there. I hope whoever drafts him doesn't overextend him, but it'll be a lot of fun to watch him play. So I personally would have went with Shedeur Sanders here, but the Giants brass is definitely fighting for their jobs, so they went with the veteran quarterbacks. Russell Wilson on his 4th team in 4 years, and Jameis Winston. I don't really think that's a recipe for success, but what do I know? So Abdul Carter makes a lot of sense too, but I think offensive line has to be fixed. Other than Andrew Thomas, there's still not a lot here. Evan Neal was a huge bust. Will Campbell, a lot has been made about his short arms and all that nonsense, but from what I've read, front offices are not concerned. The guy's a stud. He can play left tackle. He'll play right tackle for the Giants, or if he moves inside the guard, he has all pro potential there. The Patriots did what bad teams with a lot of cap space and a quarterback on a rookie contract should do, and splurge in free agency big time. They added a ton of guys to defense. They added a right tackle. Offensive line is still probably the biggest need, but I don't see how you pass up Abdul Carter here. He's the best pass rusher in this class by far, a great all-around defender, and with Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, and a few others on that defense to go along with Christian Gonzalez and other guys, that could really be a strength, and the Patriots could have one of the very best defenses in the NFL next year. So all the mock drafts have Mason Graham going to the Jaguars here. The fit makes sense position-wise. They do need a defensive tackle, but I don't know, man. He measured in at less than 300 pounds and wasn't the most athletic. I'm going to go with Armand Membu. If I said that right, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Trevor Lawrence got hurt. Etienne couldn't run the ball. You need an offensive line, and theirs just isn't all that great. They signed Patrick McCarry from the Ravens, but he's just kind of a guy. So Membu could play offensive tackle, or I think he will be better off inside at guard in the NFL. I think he's just a beast inside, and no matter where you put him, I mean, the Jaguars just need offensive linemen. They got to block for Lawrence if they want to have any chance. So Ashton Jeanty is pretty much the universal mock pick here for the Raiders at 6. It makes sense. Pete Carroll had Marshawn Lynch back in the day when he coached the Seahawks. No team ran the ball worse than the Raiders did in 2024. But this class is so deep with running backs, there could be anywhere between 8 and 12 future starters out of this group. With Will Johnson still on the board, he's such a dynamic talent that I think it would be a big mistake to pass on him to take a running back. His junior year was cut short by an injury, and that caused his stock to slip a little bit, but his situation reminds me of Derek Stingley a couple years ago. The tape that he put out his first 2 years was top 5 quality, and he still ended up being picked that high, and he was an all-pro last year. I see the same with Will Johnson. Even during an injury-plagued season, he still had 2 pick sixes. He has, I think, 9 interceptions for his career. Big time playmaker. Raiders really don't have a lot at that position. So I think if Johnson falls out of the top 10, a lot of teams are really going to regret that decision. If one of the two offensive tackles is still on the board, I think the Jets run and trip over each other to get to the podium and select one of those guys. They would be a perfect fit at right tackle. I don't really see any other offensive linemen worth taking this high, so the Jets need to pivot to offense and give Justin Fields somebody other than Garrett Wilson to throw to. The receiver and especially tight end group is especially pathetic in New York. I'm not a huge fan of taking tight ends in the top 10, but Tyler Warren had over 100 receptions as a senior, and he would be a fantastic fit for an erratic throwing quarterback like Justin Fields. Carolina has the makings of a pretty decent offense, but the defense is absolutely miserable. They need help at pretty much every position on that side of the field. They only had 32 sacks in 17 games last year, making pass rush the #1 priority for this team. Jalen Walker isn't quite an Abdul Carter as just a pass rushing terror, but he's a very good all-around linebacker, can get after the quarterback, and is agile enough to chase down some ball carriers and even play on passing downs. They cut Shaq Thompson. They're relying on Jadeveon Clowney. So Walker will definitely fill a big need for Carolina. So I'm a Colorado Buffalo fan, and I've seen all the hate that Deion Sanders has gotten the past couple of years, which is pretty much all unjustified. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way people are. And it's fallen down on his son as well. I won't get into that too much. I'll just focus on the field part of it. I think he's still going to be a top 10 pick, but I don't really know where he's going to go. I don't project trades in my mock draft, so he fell to number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr may be out for the year, even before they probably needed a young quarterback to groom. Spencer Rattler is not really going to be that guy. I like Sanders, and I think the hate he's getting is unjustified. Todd McShay recently ranked Jackson Dart over Sanders, which is ridiculous and probably one of the reasons he got fired from ESPN. I like Sanders. He may just be a better version of Geno Smith in the NFL, but he's tough. He's a winner. He elevates the players around him, and I think he's going to be a solid pro. The Bears went big during free agency, bringing in several offensive linemen and some defenders as well. So that really opens up the draft board for them to take the best player available. Ashton Jeanty would be a perfect fit in this offense. DeAndre Swift was one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL last year. Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. There's a lot of good skill position players on this team. Adding a real stud 3-down running back like Jeanty could really help bring this offense to the next level. The 49ers had been one of the better teams in the NFC for the past 5 years or so, but the roster was getting old and injuries pretty much ruined whatever depth they had in 2024. The defensive line in particular, they have to replace 3 starters from last season. Mason Graham, I don't think he's quite a top 5 pick like a lot of people have him. He weighed 293 pounds at the combine, way down from his listed weight of 320 when he was in college. A good athlete, not great, but he's a very solid all-around defensive tackle. May never be an all-pro, but should step right in for the 49ers and become an instant starter at defensive tackle for them. A pretty big steal at the 11th pick in the draft. So Dak Prescott gets a lot of flack for failing to deliver, but other than CeeDee Lamb, Dallas's skill position talent really leaves a lot to be desired. I would say Lamb is probably the only above average guy as far as receivers, tight end, or running back goes. Matthew Golden was the darling of the combine, running a blazing 4.29 40-yard dash. He's more than just a speedster. He was very productive at Texas. They spread the ball around a lot. They had a lot of playmakers, but he still had almost 1,000 yards receiving as a junior. So anybody who can take the lid off the defense and give Lamb a little bit of break every once in a while would be welcome for the Dallas offense. So Miami GM Chris Grier really chased big names the past few years. Jalen Ramsey, Teron Armstead, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb. And as a result of trading draft picks and giving those guys big contracts, there are gigantic holes all over the place on this roster. Most notably, the defensive line. I'm a Dolphins fan. Other than Zach Sealer, I probably can't name one player on that position. I'm a big Walter Nolan fan. I probably have him ranked higher than a lot of people do. Former top overall recruit, really came together as a junior when he transferred to Ole Miss. Good pass rusher, solid run defender, good size and strength. Reminds me a lot of Christian Wilkins, who held the position down in Miami for quite a few years before moving on. The Dolphins simply need talented bodies at the defensive line position, and I think Nolan can slide right in at defensive end. This may be a slight reach for Colston Loveland, the second tight end drafted in the top 15. That usually doesn't happen. He's not a Tyler Warren, but he was Michigan's entire offense for much of the season. The quarterbacks really struggled, but he was the one safety valve and the constant for that offense. The Colts are in a similar position with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson at quarterback. They got less from their tight end position than almost any team in the NFL. Loveland's big, strong, not much of a blocker, but should help as a safety valve for the Colts passing offense, which has struggled a lot in recent memory. Atlanta has famously drafted skill position players in the top 10 in 4 straight drafts. While that really hasn't yielded a lot of results, it also has put a big strain on the defense, which really lacks star power. No team was worse at getting after the quarterback than Atlanta in 2024, so they've got to draft some pass rushers. I went with Mike Green over Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart here. Green may not have the upside of those other two or the size, speed combination as those guys, but he was very productive in college, led NCAA in sacks, and should be a double-digit guy in the NFL. Atlanta simply needs to hit on this pick and get a guy who can produce right away. This Arizona offense is probably one more legitimate receiver away from being playoff worthy. The tight end, running back, Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray, that's all pretty good. The offensive line got reinforcements. Adding McMillan, another big, huge target to the outside with Michael Wilson in the middle, that would give Arizona 4 serious pass catchers. I think McMillan would be a good Mike Evans type. Poor man's Mike Evans, not the quickest, but very strong, huge catch radius, would really help take some pressure off of Marvin Harrison, who dealt with a lot of double and triple teams as a rookie. So Cincinnati missed the playoffs last year, but you can't blame that on the offense. Joe Burrow had an MVP caliber season, but the defense was just nowhere to be found. If Cincinnati spent every single one of their draft picks on that side of the ball, you wouldn't blame them very much. Trey Hendrickson, looking for that contract, probably won't get it at defensive end. Myles Murphy hasn't quite developed on the other side. Shamar Stewart, another guy who blew up the combine, but didn't really have a very productive college career. Only 4.5 sacks through 3 seasons, but he looks the part and he is definitely athletic and talented. Cincinnati can swing for the fences here in hopes they land a real contributor because they need all the help they can get. Seattle is a team in transition. They're going to break in a new quarterback, and they added Cooper Kupp. What they really want to do is build around the running game, Kenneth Walker. You're going to need an offensive line to do that, and other than Charles Cross, there's not a lot there right now, especially the interior. Kelvin Banks played tackle at Texas, but I don't think he'll have any problem sliding inside to guard. He's a very strong pass blocker, needs to work on his run blocking, but he has the agility to hold his own no matter what position you put him at. Seattle simply needs bodies along the line. Tampa Bay has owned what has been a pretty weak division, the NFC South, for quite a few years now, built around a solid veteran, balanced offense and a defense that makes just enough plays to keep things interesting. They've really struggled to develop an edge pass rush despite spending first-round picks in the past. Donovan E., I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name because I'm terrible at it and it's not my job, really blew up the combine running a blazing 40-yard dash and wowing everybody. Put that with his production at Boston College, racking up sacks by the boatload, and you can see why he's a clear first-round pick at this point. Quick, undersized, but I think he can hold his own during passing downs and provide quite a bit of pass rush for the Buccaneers. The Broncos had spent the past few years really building a solid roster, and with the quarterback play of Bo Nix, all that came to fruition as they had a winning record and looked to be in very good position going forward, making this a best player available type situation. Patrick Surtain, an all-pro on one side, Riley Moss developing cornerback on the other side, but Jahdae Barron would give them an excellent nickelback type. You always need 3 good cornerbacks in today's NFL. The Jim Thorpe Award winner had a bunch of interceptions, had a very good combine, and definitely looks the part of a first-round draft pick at a premium position. It has been a tough go of things at quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired several years ago for the Steelers. They're always going to be too good to pick at the top of the draft and land a real blue chip prospect. They've gone through guys like Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, probably waiting on Aaron Rodgers to do his weird offseason thing before he spends his final year of his career in Pittsburgh. So they still need to find a quarterback of the future. Jackson Dart is the hot name right now, with morons like Todd McShay actually ranking him higher than Shedeur Sanders in his most recent mock draft. That's silliness, but it happens every year with quarterbacks. Dart had a good season for Ole Miss, playing in a pro-style offense surrounded by talented position players. I think he could be a serviceable starter. Whether he'll end up being better than Kenny Pickett, who was drafted around the same spot a few years ago, I'm not sure, but Pittsburgh has to do something. Michael Williams definitely looks the part of a top 5 draft pick. He's basically what you would sculpt if you were trying to build a defensive end. Big, strong, agile. He never quite put it together at Georgia, even though he did have double-digit sack for his 3-year career. It was mostly as a part-time player. I expected him to dominate the combine and pre-draft process, but he didn't really do that either. So it's mostly potential that's going to get him drafted in the first round, even though it'll probably be in the 20s. Still, though, he's too talented to not be a first-round draft pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was a better pro player than he was college. The Chargers let go of Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack's basically year to year at this point, so they could definitely use a young defensive end / edge rusher to develop. There have been a couple of exceptions, but the Packers almost exclusively draft defense in the first round, and I fully expect them to do that again this year. They need pass rushing help and especially need cornerbacks. Eric Stokes left as a free agent, and Jair Alexander basically hanging on to his roster spot by the skin of his teeth at this point. Maxwell Hairston might not be a first-round pick production-wise. He is a good playmaker, but struggles a bit with consistency. He had a really good combine, and cornerbacks tend to rise when the draft comes around. There's a lot of them that are selected in the first round every year. Hairston's right on that bubble, but the Packers really need help, and they're deep enough everywhere else to slightly overreach for the position. Like I've mentioned before, if you're a playoff team and have a quarterback on his rookie contract, you really go for it in free agency, and the Vikings definitely did that. They've added a ton of veterans to fill a lot of holes. Secondary is probably the biggest weak spot, but I don't see a cornerback worth taking here. Malachi Stark's very talented all-around safety. I have a lot of trouble putting safeties in the top 15 because just the position is not that valuable when it comes to the draft, but Stark's a good cover guy, can play some nickel, will probably take over for Harrison Smith in a year or two. Just a good guy to have in the back end of your defense. Houston decided to make some pretty big changes along its offensive line this offseason. They traded Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders and let both of their starting offensive guards from the 2024 season go. So they are going to be on the lookout for a couple new starters and will probably go that direction in the draft. Gray Zabel is the best non-Division I prospect in this class. He played tackle for the Bisons, North Dakota State, but he'll probably move inside to center or guard in the NFL. Good athlete, pretty agile, very experienced, should be one of those guys that you can throw in the starting lineup right away and he won't embarrass himself. For a team that went like 5 or 6 years without a first-round pick, the Rams are shockingly pretty well set with young players all throughout the roster. They can go with the best player available. Nicky Manwari, big, strong, built like a linebacker, really had a great combine. The Rams have gone cheap at safety. They have a couple of good young players, but nobody with the talent that this guy has. He could be an extra linebacker on the field, needs to work on his coverage, but a really strong, talented, exciting young prospect. Baltimore is usually one of those teams that has to hit on their draft picks because they're always up against it cap-wise and let a lot of people go. It usually works out. They're a very good drafting team. They need defensive linemen badly. I wasn't even able to fill out enough guys on my offseason roster to cut Michael Pierce, who retired. So Derek Harmon, not an exciting prospect, but a 5-year senior, very experienced, tall, strong, had a good combine, should be able to fill in at either tackle or defensive end for the Ravens. The Lions could definitely use a defensive end here, but I think there's just so many good players available, the 2 Ohio State guys, Landon Jackson, some others, that they could probably get a player just as good with their second round pick. Interior of the offensive line, if they want to keep that offense humming, especially the running game, keep that offensive line elite. Booker here is a guard prospect only, but he's big, strong, a good pass blocker, a good run blocker, could step right in and really keep this offense humming for the Lions. The Commanders are looking to build on Jalen Daniels' success. They traded for Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil to elevate the offense even further. Why not add that final piece with a true 3-down running back like Omarion Hampton of North Carolina? Hampton is big and strong and quick, but what really sets him apart is his receiving ability, a very good pass catcher, meaning he can stay on the field for all 3 downs. One of the true rare 3-down, every down running back that you can build your offense around. Buffalo really likes to employ a deep rotation of defensive linemen, which means they're always going to attack that position in the first couple of rounds of the draft. James Pierce is one of the better pure pass rushers in this class. Problem is he weighs 240 pounds on a good day. It's just he's going to really have to bulk up if he wants to be more than just a situational guy, which is why he's still available here. But for a team as deep as Buffalo and picking at the very bottom of the first round, to get a guy who can come in and get after the quarterback on passing downs, that's good enough. Andy Reid likes to draft offensive and defensive line early, and with that being a need in Kansas City once again, I fully expect him to go that direction. Jalen Moore was signed as a free agent, but he's a career backup. Jawan Taylor's just okay on the other side, so tackle's a big need. Josh Connerly, very talented, has the talent of a first-round pick, was not overly consistent at Oregon, but this late in the first round, he's a good talent. Kansas City is good at developing offensive line. I think it's a good fit. Thanks to amazing drafting and key free agent signings, the world champion Eagles are the deepest team in the NFL. They don't have a lot of needs. With the 32nd pick, they're probably not going to draft an impact starter. But Milton Williams departed as a free agent. There's a spot available. So Tyleik Williams could be that third first-round draft pick to be a part of Philadelphia's amazing defensive line. He's big, but a tremendous athlete for his size. And that's the first round. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Sometimes I do like doing things a little different. I always say I'm not an expert, I'm just a fan. This is just my opinion. I'm excited for the draft. It should be very unpredictable. There's a lot of guys that could go in the first round. The second round looks pretty deep. Yeah, so that's all I got. I hope you guys like this. Please stay tuned. I'll have one final offseason roster update after the draft with at least the first 2 rounds of NFL Draft Prospect. Thank you.